Sometimes the value of VDC like gets lost because we're so focused on the BIM component instead of thinking like, how does BIM align with people, right? The right people with the right information together at the right time and process to align with objectives.
You're listening to the Building Better Futures podcast, where innovation meets inspiration. In each episode, host Eric Hurani journeys alongside notable thought leaders who are shaping the future, cultivating exceptional work cultures, and nurturing the next generation of trailblazers. We aim to spark inspiration by engaging in dialogue with leaders from groundbreaking companies, innovative projects, and exceptional teams. Our goal is to empower individuals to positively impact those around them and leave a lasting legacy of positive change in our communities and society at large. Let's dive in together and explore what it takes to build better futures, one conversation at a time.
Today, I'm joined by Danielle Dy Buncio, co-founder and CEO of VIATechnik. Hey, Danielle, how are you?
Hey, Eric, I am good. Thanks for having me.
No, I'm really excited about this conversation. And, I love the original story for how we connected and an iconic project. And I won't steal your thunder because maybe you'll talk about it later. But just really excited to hear about your career, hear about you, and hear about where this industry is going with like technology.
Yeah,
Um,
thanks. Excited for the conversation.
and before we get into that, though, I always start the shows with some good news and gratitude. Is there something you'd like to share with me in the audience? Good news, personal, professional, gratitude for someone, maybe?
Yeah, I will share a personal one and a professional one. So, professionally, we're seeing a lot in the news right now about the National Geographic Museum in DC because they just announced the opening date, which is June 26th. VIATechnik's digital twin platform Voyager is on it, so I'm super excited. I actually just planned a little vacation with my son to head out there in June. I'll also kind of share some gratitude for my son Zachary. It's spring break. I have two boys, but I was able to take one of my boys, Zach, up to Door County for the weekend. Door County, Wisconsin, like small little town, but it's actually a place I like grew up visiting and had a little honeymoon there as well.
Mhm.
So it's a special place. We had a good time.
That's awesome. Sounds like another iconic project. Very cool. So congrats on that. And I love family time, right? You just like those are minutes you'll never get back. How old's your son?
So he's 9. He has the best imagination and he takes like so much joy in the little things. Like even just like watching the sunset was like so fun with him.
I love
And I
that.
never like stopped to do that. So yeah, it's great.
I have an interesting, like a funny story. My daughter's much younger. She says she's like in not even pre-K, nurseries or no daycare. And my wife went in to do mystery reader, and
Oh,
so they give the kids clues about your mom, right? And whose mom is it? And the last clue was she loves sunsets. So just thinking back to what you said about your son, and my wife does love sunsets, and my daughter knew it immediately. She's like, "That's my mom." It's like, so
awesome. Yeah,
cool.
that's such a great experience.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. I always have gratitude for the guests on show days. I know how incredibly busy your schedule must be, so thank you for making time to do this. Really cool. And then my good news, I guess, and by the time this airs, it won't be true. But my dad's birthday was this week, and we tend to do an Islander game every year around his birthday, and so we got the opportunity to do that, and it's just a lot of fun. And again, spending time with family, right? Those are just moments you can't get back, so you try to make the most of them.
That's great.
It's a lot of fun, yeah. All right, great. Well, thank you for sharing. Tell me about yourself, give me your, like, background. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? How'd you get into this business? Just tell me about that.
Yeah. So I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago in a town called Oak Park. I sometimes tell people I got into this business as a toddler. My parents started a construction company when I was a little kid. So like honestly, as like a 3, 4-year old, I was attending job sites, which like is not something that you can do with kids today.
Anymore? No.
Usually I was outside the construction fence. But I say that because I do feel like the construction industry is like the only industry for me. I just love it. I think it's really cool that we're like building for the future. I think it's cool that, we create these things that like last beyond our lifetime. And that like changed so many aspects of humanity. So, yeah, construction's my industry. How I got into it, I suppose, a little bit more formally. I went to Stanford for civil engineering. Actually, at first wanted to be a roller coaster designer, but decided the construction pull was really strong. So when I graduated, worked for companies out in Silicon Valley, building like a lot of like sustainable building projects, big tech company campuses, things like that. Moved to Australia for a little bit, so got to travel, explore another side of the world, but worked for a construction company there. Then moved back to Chicago, worked for my family business. They were on the infrastructure side, so like, bridges, the Chicago Riverwalk, things like that. When I was in business school, I went to Kellogg for my MBA. I decided to found VIATechnik actually with my husband Anton. We had very different careers, so never thought we'd actually end up working together. He's a management consultant by background, so like really good at problem solving, asking great questions, really good at operations. And honestly, one day I feel like we were suddenly working on the same problem. So we founded VIATechnik almost 14 years ago now with this goal of like meeting the construction industry where they were on their digital journey, bringing them to the next level. So early days, it was a lot of like, hey, you're building on paper, you're building with 2D. How do we bring you into 3D? How do we adopt this new technology workflow? And yeah, I don't know. Today it's like still fun, still growing, still making an impact. And yeah, I guess that's how I got in.
That's awesome, and I didn't realize, we're like kindred spirits. I have a very similar so I knew about your travel. I do some I learn about some like, a little bit about guests before they're on. But I what I didn't know was, that you kinda grew up in construction. I did the same way. My dad, was his company is 35 years old, and I'm 37 years old, and so, like, I don't have memories from before being in this industry, and, very cool, very, very interesting
Very cool.
backgrounds.
I will say, I do feel like a lot of people in the construction industry, like you had to know someone
Yep.
who was in construction to like choose construction sometimes. I think that's a paradigm that I'd actually like to change, right? Because like little kids love to build, right? Like what little kid doesn't like love Legos or is like using like pieces of construction equipment and like the sand, like playgrounds and stuff like that. But yeah, the industry needs to like share more with the next generation because I do feel like it's these people around us in our lives that like inspired us to show us that like, hey, there was a possible career path here.
It's absolutely true. It's something we actually talk about a lot on the show. When you like, let's say you're growing up, right? TV is a big part of our exposure, and media is a big part of our exposure, right? Like, what do you see? You almost never see an engineer, an architect, or a builder. You see like an attorney or a doctor, or the professors, right? Like, and so I do agree with you. I think we need more exposure and something we work on. I have a foundation, and we do a lot of work with like how do we get the like information of what a career in architecture, engineering, construction means to kids, both early age, right? So K through 12, but then even like college and emerging professionals, right? Like there's always an opportunity to be involved in this industry. So I
Yeah,
love what you said about it
love
being a
that.
paradigm shift. Very cool. So great background, exciting. Would love to hear. I love Australia. So you were in Sydney, is that right?
I was, yeah. So I was in Sydney. For most of my stint there, I actually lived on Bondi Beach, which is a
Oh,
very
cool.
like expat, like great place to live. I worked for one of the largest construction companies out in Australia. Learned a lot. I felt like, you think that how you build is like a global thing. But there were aspects there that really stood out compared to the experience I got. Everybody always says safety first, right? And like the US has a very like safety first construction culture. They take safety to a whole nother level. And so I learned a lot that I like brought back when I like rejoined the construction industry in the US. It was funny. I think Australia is the only place that finds the American accent interesting. So once I looked out there and they're like, "Oh, we just can like listen to you talk." They actually put me in charge of giving the safety orientation to every person who entered our job site. I was building a law school building at Sydney University. So anybody that went on that job site listened to like a 1 hour safety onboarding from me. Because of that, though, I learned so much about like what safety meant to like to my organization as a whole. to my job site, like project executives, superintendents, but every single person in the field, getting home safe, having each other's back, putting safety before any other aspect of construction, right? Like whether it was speed, or budget or anything, was so important. So learned a lot.
That's awesome. And like just safety is our biggest service line. So I have a lot that I could talk about here, and I'm very passionate about it. And I appreciate you bringing that up. Very interesting that you had to do all the orientations. A lot of our team members have to do a lot of the orientations. So I totally understand what that feels like. I like what you touched on there, though, your perspective from being in different areas, right? So earlier you mentioned Silicon Valley. I know you grew up in Chicago. You just talked about Sydney. Where do you think the industry is still like maybe needs some progress? And you know what? For the question, I would say like primarily here in America, let's talk about. But what did you see maybe in some other places, or even being part of that tech community, right? Like they're more forward thinking than we might be on some public works projects or even some privately owned, development that maybe are 100-year-old builders, right? Like they know what they're doing, but they're not as interested in what's new and out there.
Yeah, so having lived and worked in Silicon Valley, Sydney, Australia, and Chicago, um, all three have very different vibes. But even though I'm like, our headquarters is here in Chicago, we work around the country. So the pulse that I have is like pretty interesting. If I look at the places I've lived, like Silicon Valley, of course, is like very innovative, very tech forward. There's like always something new being put into practice. When I was there, it was like all about green building. I was one of the first, like, or those early, like, lead accredited professionals, building for technology companies. So you could kind of like see a little bit of that future. Sydney, like I mentioned, was a very like safety first culture. I think Chicago's this place that like understands hard work. They know how to get things done. It was interesting for me, like, moving back to Chicago, founding VIATechnik shortly after. I remember, like, telling some of my friends in Silicon Valley, like, "Oh, I'm starting this company." And they were all shocked when they found out that it was, like, a profitable growth business versus, like, losing money or not even understanding, like, how to make money yet. And I was like, "Wait, why is this funny? Like, our business is, like, supposed to make money?" So, like, what I saw from those 3 places was that, like, what matters to people is very different, but, like, I was able to take bits and pieces of that and, like, learn from it. Around the country, I honestly think that, like, every market that we're in has, like, bright spots of innovation. Like, I love New York. They're always building, like, what's bigger, what's better. It feels so like, I have more energy when I go to New York, which is surprising because 'cause you'd think that there's so much hustle and bustle that you'd feel tired, but, like, there's something about it where you, like, actually feel, like, more energy. People are always building what's next. I think places like, Florida and stuff sometimes gets, like, a bad rap for being, like, slower to embrace technology, but honestly, when you talk to the people down there building, there's so much, like, pride in the work. So, I don't know if it's, like, a perfect answer to your question, but I think, like, across the country, there's, like, a lot to learn from each other, and as I think about, like, what I take away, like, I almost feel like I take away, like, the best of each place and try to, like, spread it across the country.
That no, it's a great answer, and I'm gonna tell you, I'm just stuck on one thing you said because I say this all the time, and I had like I'm an LP in some funds and things like that, and it took me so long to understand like how you could start a business without a path to profitability immediately. Like the fact that you're literally banking on like
Yeah.
in year 5 we will break even, and I think just a couple of months ago there was like the OpenAI, it might have been a couple of weeks ago, OpenAI AI, like, released their financials, and they were like, "We may break even," and they're losing, I want like, billions. Like, it's
Yeah.
insanity, but it works for that Silicon Valley lifestyle, they just know how to do it.
One of my
Um,
friends, like, years ago, she got a title, it was, like, Chief Monetization Officer, and I was like, "What's that?" And she's like, "Well, I'm in charge of figuring out, like, how my company is going to make money." I think there's validity, obviously, to those business models, like,
model works, yeah.
right? Sometimes, like, you need capital to, like, invest in the technology, right? Or invest in, like, certain aspects of, like, the infrastructure. I think what's powerful, like, VIATechnik's never taken outside funding. I think what's been powerful about that is that we've always built our business for our clients, right? Like, our clients are the ones funding our growth. If they find value, right, they'll go with VIATechnik. They'll pay for our services, and I think that's important because everything that we invest in then is to like make our clients' lives like a little bit better. So
No, that's definitely true, and I think it's also probably part of the way we were raised, right? Like in construction, you can't go into a job being like, "Well, we'll lose on this one, we'll lose on the next one, eventually we'll break even, and eventually we'll make money." So it's just,
that happens sometimes. Construction projects can get underwater quickly.
it happens, but it's not the goal.
No,
I've
not
never
the
heard
goal.
anyone on the construction side be like, "We're not gonna do it." So talk to us. So you started the show and you mentioned about the museum and digital twin, and so I'm curious, like when you are going to some of these major clients, right? How do you explain the business case for using VDC to some of these leaders, right? And maybe tell us a little bit more about like what digital twin is and how exactly will it be implemented there, and what will
Yeah.
Voyager do for them?
Yeah, cool. All right, I'll start with VDC because you mentioned that, and I think like digital twin is sort of that like next evolution and kind of what it means for the operation cycle of the building. So virtual design and construction is very much the core of VIATechnik's business. And I mentioned like when we started, we wanted to meet our clients where they were on their digital journey, bring them to the next level. There is still so much value to be gained from like properly implementing VDC. What I see today is that the like original definition of VDC has sometimes gotten lost. And it's kind of like, okay, we're gonna do BIM and we're gonna do it well or something like that. Right? VDC was started by actually a professor of mine from Stanford who actually sits on VIATechnik's board now, Martin Fisher. He's the director of a group at Stanford called the Center for Integrated Facilities Engineering, which is Stanford SciFi. They're really cool organizations, like an industry academic partnership that always has like one step in the future and is investing in research and development to like advance the built environment. When he first explained VDC to me, and I'll share this because I just think so much of like what the industry can get out actually just goes back to the core of the definition. He was like, VDC is all about the people, but best people can only do so much without tools. And the key tool in the VDC framework is BIM. But the best people, the right tools, they won't achieve anything in a poor workflow. So as we think about the workflow, right, processes are more likely to be followed if they're created by the people in the workflows. So think about like lean methodology, like pull planning, those sort of concepts. So we have people, process, and technology. They don't matter unless they're focused on the right things. And so that now comes down to project objectives and then client or like the end owner, user operator objectives. So sometimes the value of VDC like gets lost because we're so focused on the BIM component instead of thinking like, how does BIM align with people, right? The right people with the right information together at the right time and process to align with objectives. When there's that alignment, like how is it not viewed as a competitive advantage, right? Stakeholders are aligned, the owner gets what they want. Too many owners in the construction industry are like putting up with poor project outcomes, right? Like their project has program changes that they need to make because it's not as usable as they had hoped it would be. There's budget problems, there's schedule problems, right? But the owners actually get what they want. You can kind of take that improvement like on one project and start to scale it. So that's how I really think about like the business case for VDC is like going back to the roots, thinking about the objectives that you care about and starting to align it there. When you can achieve those like objectives you care about, right? Then it's all about scale. And it's all about pushing what's next, right? So today I think VDC is very much thought about during like design and construction, that delivery process, but it needs to continue into operations. And so how we're thinking about it at VIATechnik is like, how does that digital thread continue across the project lifecycle into operations? How does data start to enable a better facilities management or building operations process? All of the owner clients that we work with are always talking about like day two, right? Day one, the building opens. Day two, the building starts to change. So already there's like a next capital project within this building. How do we start to like use that data to build better? And that's where the digital twin comes in. Um, to me, a digital twin is that physical representation is the digital representation of the physical building. That data model helps us understand what's happening in the building, why is it happening in the building, and ultimately starts to like unlock some of the industry goals we hear about like predictive maintenance and autonomous buildings. The digital twin integrates all those different data sources, and there's a lot of power when you integrate data, right? Like you have new level of insights, new level of action. I don't know, I'll stop there. It's, like, a very exciting topic to me, I care a lot about it. But I think part of how I answer your question is that, like, going back to the core of, like, what is VDC and what is digital twin can help companies really, like, align on the value proposition.
I don't think you have to stop. I mean, you answered the question perfectly. I totally understand how you can like sell this right to leaders in the industry because it really is a strategic advantage, right? It's going to make both design and construction easier. And you touched on an important piece that like I've always we talk about a lot and I've picked up on just from the industry is as much as it's about the design and construction part of it, it's really about operation and maintenance for like the life cycle of the building, right? And so much, I think back to like when I first got in the industry, right? Like what was part of closeout was like the O&M manuals being turned over to these owners, right? And these O&M manuals are thousands of pages long. They get thrown out, I'm sure, like immediately. Like they just get them and toss them in the garbage, or they hand them to someone who puts them in a closet. And it's
Yeah.
like, are we providing value to the operators, the maintenance team, right, after we've left that job site? And I think, like, a digital twin is, like, definitely a way to do that because they can start to see you talked about predictive maintenance, right? Like, not waiting for something to fail or, not understanding that it is going to fail eventually. I think so key. So, if you wanted to add some more to that, I thought it was a great answer. But if not, we could continue, and I'm sure
Maybe
there'll be more about it.
I'll speak to something you just said, right? Like, that project closeout turnover O&M manual thing, like, I think back to the very first construction project I was a part of, and I remember the owner asking for 8 copies of everything.
Yeah.
Me and my project assistant, probably 2 weeks of our lives to, like, collect everything, make these, like, different binders and stuff, and now I picture that, like, going back, I'm like, "Did they need 8 binders? Because 'Cause they're just, like, all over the building." They're like, "Oh, no, something's broken," like, find the that manual.
Yeah.
Like, they're just like, if there was 8, they're scattered about, and so we're bound to find it or bound to use it. But it so when we work with our owner clients, we we bring them through this, like, digital twin journey, and we talk to them about, like, "Hey, what questions do you wanna answer about your building?" And this progression starts from, like, "What is in my building?" to what is happening in my building, to why is it happening, to then some of those more advanced questions like what should happen, right? And thinking about like the actions that you should take or how you could start to like make operations better and more efficient proactively. As I walk them through the progression, a lot of them laugh and they're like, wow, yeah, you're right. I can't even answer what is in my building. So I then tell this to our construction clients. It's like, where are we failing that we're delivering this product and the owner that we're delivering it to can't answer the question, what is in my building? And it does go back to sometimes like the construction delivery process. Like I sometimes say like, what we don't know what we're building until like after we've built it. Hence the whole like as building process.
Yep.
Right? And so if we think about, like, why VDC is important, it's it's the data that we get into the hands of the people who need it at the time when they need it. Like, what are you going to build and just fly? Early days of my career as a project engineer, I felt like sometimes I was like the right-hand man of my superintendent, following him and cataloging his questions and turning them into RFIs. He's like, "Oh, I don't know how to build this." Like, "Oh, this piece of information is missing." Like, "This is what I'm gonna do. Make sure it's okay." And all of those questions should get answered before we hit the field so that when we're in the field, right, it's just like you're flying
Streamline.
and we're back to building. So
No, I totally. You brought me back to a time early in my career, same exact scenario, and like I remember one of those nights, like you have some memories that just like stick with you. And I was in the office till 3 a.m. because like collation wasn't as easy as it is
yeah.
today, and like I'd printed something wrong, and then I had to like reprint the whole thing, and again, these binders were literally thousands of pages. Like there was so much documentation in 'em, multiple copies, checking them, like, I was there all night, and it was like I know no one ever looked at what I gave them. I know that ended up like cobwebs in a closet because the operators either already knew the equipment and were like, "Well, I know what to do," or, like, thought they knew the equipment and were just gonna do what they were gonna do. No one is gonna refer to the menu.
That's true though, right? Like there's a lot of knowledge in the superintendent's head and the
Yep.
facilities manager's head that the construction industry like kind of gets by on. But that workforce is aging. The information that we're turning over is important, but I think there's like a data accessibility problem.
Yep.
And I think that's where like these digital workflows really help support, right? Like people actually can get the data that they need. And as more and more data sources get collected, get integrated, it's like there's this new opportunity for insights. Like, what is the data telling me? And how do I take action from it?
Yeah, I think the most critical, because I think it applies to everything thing you mentioned there, is the importance of getting the data in the hands of the right people at the right time, right? Because too much data is also bad, right? I don't need to know the 10-year maintenance plan on day 2, right? I need to know what's my 30-day maintenance plan and what do I do weekly and what do I do daily, right, to ensure that functionality of the building is up to speed. And so you bring an interesting topic up that I wanted to ask you about anyway when you talk about like data, so much data being available. Right now, that's great. It's digital. How is like AI impacting what you do? Like where at what point are we in the digital twin where I can ask like when should I maintain this unit? And it just tells me like,
Oh,
hey,
that's
this is
cool. Yeah, that's cool. You like you teed up my thought process for AI there very well. Um, we are so AI is impacting, I would say like me personally, but like VIATechnik as a whole, our clients as a whole, and in like a lot of different ways, very different ways. One, we're building a ton of data centers. Like the growth of data centers is definitely like fueling the growth of VIATechnik's business. I sometimes feel like we have these front row seats into like what's coming because of that. Personally, I do use AI daily. I might not be like the best use case. I'm not like vibe coding at night like a lot of people are.
I wish I was. I hear that a lot. I wish I was,
Yeah.
but I'm pretty
I
good.
I also like my sleep, so, like, there's only so much, like, tech at night that I'm gonna do, but, I do use it daily. I feel like it's my little assistant, and, like, the cool thing is now that I've been using it for a few years, I feel like it knows me really well. So, like, the speed that I can, like, work with AI to, like, get ideas out, get plans in motion is, like, completely different than it was a year ago. But, like, I think the biggest thing is that for VIATechnik, we're building a lot of AI functionality into our tech products. So I mentioned Voyager, right? Like, at the very start, Voyager is our digital twin platform. Um, and one of the things that we're doing is creating like a chat interface AI overlay onto that building data. What's cool about that is that like for most of our clients, we're integrating data like the BIM. So you have like geospatial context, but you also have like so much data that's behind all of those elements in the model. We're integrating reality capture, so like laser scans or things like Matterport, all the asset information, right? So the information about their equipment, the documents like O&M manuals and warranties, like we talked about, and then also the building systems. So like the building management system or BMS, the facilities ticketing systems. So like here's all the facilities issues that we've dealt with in this building. What's cool is that because all that data is integrated and we now have this AI overlay on top of it, we can start to ask all sorts of questions. So like, well, actually, probably by the time this podcast is out, we'll have released this like chat with your building data feature on Voyager. The question that you asked is like very feasible. It just depends on like what data you've collected and put into the
Right,
digital,
yeah.
right? So like our clients are asking questions like what rooms or do I have any rooms where temperature ranges are out of normal? Or is there equipment assets that have a higher than average facilities issue? This is cool because I think these questions are going back to like what's in the building, what's happening in the building, why is it happening? But it's giving them like new insights. It's helping them take action, right? So, like, what rooms have temperature ranges out of normal? Let's go check on the rooms, right? Let's go check on the systems that are feeding those rooms. What's happening? It's also helping close the feedback loop. So as we're learning about what's happening, my question about like, is there an equipment asset that has a higher than average facilities issue?
Yep.
What core problem do I need to fix there? We work with a lot of building owners that have like facilities, it's the same facility, distribution centers or retailers. And one client was like, what's amazing I guess maybe amazingly sad about my business is the facilities manager will be like, "Oh, I hate this roofing detail. It always leaks and it leaks the year after the warranty's up." Well, that roofing detail is literally being constructed on another building right now, and it's being spec'd into another design right now. and we're like repeating the same mistake over and over again
Yeah.
because we don't have that feedback loop closed. So, I guess to answer your question, AI is changing a lot. I feel like I'm just at the beginning of what's possible, but very much just kind of like trying to test, experiment, see what's working. I have a big thing across my company right now is just like finding those areas of momentum and like pouring fuel on it. Right. So as we see these little things that are working, it's like, hey, this is working, identify it, and then scale it.
I have a challenge to all my leadership team that they have to automate and implement AI into at least one workflow.
Yeah.
And I think part of that is it's going to be a better, more effective and efficient solution and use of their time. But the other part of it is trying to make it become more just integrated into what they do daily, right? Like, it sounds like you utilize it daily. I utilize it daily. Again, we're not vibe coding, but it's a big, it helps me get things to a point so much faster than I ever could before. And I feel the same way about the impact it's going to have on like construction and VDC and, digital twin. Because like you said, there's just now it's going to be there's this part where like it is also too much data, right? We have so much data on some buildings, and unless you can ask the right questions and get reasonable answers that you can act on, it just becomes that, right? It just becomes data at a certain point.
I
And
think
I
there's like two things there. We do need to get smarter about what data we collect and why we're collecting it. I do always recommend to our clients that we start with like some of the theses in mind, right? Like where does your company consistently lose money? Do you have this hunch that like rework is actually like your biggest money sink on your construction projects? Well, let's prove that hunch out. What data would you need to collect in order to start to like actually tackle that problem? And sort of being like a problem first approach to the data that we collect. Because also there's a lot of waste. I mean, if we talk about like themes of sustainability, there's like a lot of digital waste that you don't really realize, but that is causing an impact, right? Like, I'll have a picture on my phone and I'll send that picture to my mom, and then the picture is posted on Facebook and, or Instagram or whatever. And it's like, how many copies of that is
yeah.
existing at data centers around the world? But like you magnify that across like huge laser scans and the type of data we create in construction, it's a lot. So I do think that we need to be smarter about the data that we collect. But the other aspect that you hit on is that like AI is making it easy to understand like what the data is telling us. And that's huge, right? Because we're taking something that could be noise or that is the equivalent of the O&M manual that's shoved away and never looked at, right?
Yep.
It's in a data center, it's on your hard drive, whatever, but you're not going to look at it. Well, now it's accessible, now it's meaningful.
No, completely. And you touched on a point I was gonna just mention as we were going through this was I think the cost savings, right? Like when a room is the temperature isn't right in a room, it I mean, there's a lot of issues that come out of that, right? Like, is the room comfortable, but are the units overworked now because of that? But there's also cost savings that on like large facilities, that's a huge portion of their cost. You can have great cost savings by optimizing all of your HVAC functionality, right, in a building.
For a lot of our
Ensuring maintenance so you don't have to replace, right? Capital costs come down if you're maintaining units, right? Like we have some clients, they're maintaining their buildings in a much better way than others, right? And on a day-to-day or year-to-year basis, it feels like the OpEx is maybe a little bit lower because you're not doing as much maintenance. But the CapEx every 5 years is like twice as much, and in the long run, you've actually not saved anything. You're
yeah.
losing money.
Absolutely, right? There's this like total cost of ownership concept. And predictive maintenance is cheaper than reactive maintenance,
Correct. Yeah.
right? And so there definitely is this cost side of it. I think for a lot of our clients on the owner side, there's also like the revenue generating opportunity side of it, right? Like what revenue generating opportunities are being hindered because your building is not being put to work properly for your business. That's the other aspect that I think is like super important to think about. It's very obvious when it's like, oh, hey, this pipe burst. And so this aspect, this portion of my manufacturing line is down. But it's less obvious when it's hot and your people are unproductive. But like one of the clients we deployed the digital twin for is Disney. their business runs on like the creativity and innovation of their people. The user experience is so important to them in ways that's like almost immeasurable, right? And so now the cost of the room that has temperature ranges outside of normal is more than just, I'm gonna save X% of cost. Because actually there's diminishing returns to how much cost you can save.
Right.
But, like, theoretically, there's almost no limit to, like, the upside. So, yeah.
So, and you mentioned that was the project I didn't want to mention earlier, the project that kind of got us introduced. So,
Yeah, we can only mention so much.
yeah, yeah, very cool that you worked on it. And I'm gonna ask you, and you don't have to name a project, but give us like a project example. Where did like VDC, your implementation of VDC, move from like being a coordination tool? Because like you mentioned, right, everyone just kind of conflates it with BIM, right? Like, hey, we're VDC, we're BIM, like it's the same exact thing, and maybe it's not. But where have you seen it like kind of start out as a coordination tool and the owners or the client really bought in and it actually became like a true business advantage for them? Do you have like a story
Yeah.
that you could share?
There's a lot of stories. One that comes to mind is actually from quite a while ago. But, okay, I'll tell this story about a tree contractor that we worked with in Hawaii. I'll tell it because it was their first, time ever, like, being part of a VDC workflow, but I find that, like, so many companies, like, this story is similar across, like, so many different companies. So they're a framing contractor, they were working on a high-end resort in, Hawaii. The general contractor was, like, super innovative, so, was running a very nice VDC process. As it related to BIM, they were requiring nearly every trade to be in the model. I think a lot of times, like, what we see is that, like, it's the MEP trade. It's all about mechanical, electrical, plumbing.
Yep.
So, and that was the world that they were in. They were never really a part of it. So this was their first time, like, ever looking at models, ever being in coordination meetings, anything like that. What was really cool is because they were, like, completely new to the process, they asked such great questions. So I remember one of, like, the senior field guys asked a question like, "Hey, this is really cool. Like, I had no idea, like, this is, like, a cool way to, like, visualize what was on the plans." He's like, "Can I order from this? Can I create, like, a material list from this?" And I was like, "Well, you can, but not really. If you were really gonna order from the model, we would wanna add more details." And he goes, "Let's add them." So, we got a change order to add, like, more details to the model. We created a full, like, fabrication-ready model for them. What was really cool is that they then ordered all of their timber, like, cut to size, all of the components, they knew exactly what fittings they needed. Everything was brought to the job site in a very, like, packaged way, right? Like, this goes here, let's deliver it, touch it once, right? It gets delivered to the job site, it gets brought to where it's gonna be placed, and then gets put up. What we learned after the project was that they had a really, really high overtime budget because the project was so fast paced, they knew the only way they could meet the schedule was with a ton of overtime. Because we ordered from the model, things were cut to length, they were, like, flying in the field, they didn't use $1 from the overtime budget. And they're like, before it was like this trade contractor was a part of the VDC process because the GC was making them.
Yep.
And now they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna do this, like, for myself." It's
Everywhere.
I'm now pushing, VDC and saying, "Okay, well, on this project, I mean, they could literally say, I spent this much on BIM. I saved this much on overtime." Probably more, right? Material waste and everything.
I got to assume.
Right? Here's the ROI. Now let's go take that not just from one project to, like, all of our projects. That right there is a competitive advantage. They figured out a way to be cheaper than they were before. They can add more value to their clients. They can outperform competitors. The one thing I will say though, across any organization that I think is using VDC as a competitive advantage is the competitive advantage only stays so long, right? And so you do need to, like, constantly get better. But I think when you're analyzing, like, what's important to the project, what's important to our client, we have that opportunity to just, like, improve a little bit project to project, right? Like, to create that new level of competitive advantage. There's so many more, but there's something about that one that, like, feels very representative of where I've seen, like, some of the best change happen in the industry.
I will tell you, based on what I know of like some of the projects you've been on, I was expecting like something huge and, magnanimous, but that was better because that was so real. Like I know that contractor. I have
Oh,
that
yeah.
contractor on every job I'm on. Like, I know all of them, and it's powerful because it's like so true, and I really appreciate you sharing that story. It was actually better than anything like I think could have been on a big project because when you talk about a mega corporation implementing VDC and they're saving money, and it's like it's cool. It's not bad. But
Yeah.
that was so real to me. I don't know. It felt like a true representation of a place that this is a real business advantage and can be implemented in a great way.
I
Uh,
think what people don't always understand is that like VDC is a very scalable thing. Like, yes, the $1 billion cancer center, the brand new stadium, right? Like the million square foot corporate office, like, of course, need BIM to be built, right? Like, there's no way that you can build
yeah.
some stuff nowadays without some level of BIM or VDC. But it's scalable. Like, we've done it on 10,000 square foot office TIs, but it should be targeted at like what matters. And but it is an important competency. And I think that a lot of times, you asked about the link to the competitive advantage. Or organization like construction leaders need to understand that like hiring like two bin people is not going to turn it into it might help you pilot it. It might help you start to see the potential. It starts to make things real, but there is scale, right? It's like why companies like VIATechnik exist. I think it is why the larger organizations are able to get more value because there's like resources behind it.
It's very cool. I want to ask you, and something you actually brought up early, right? Was how we want to get more people interested in this, and so my question is just kind of like, and this is way off of this current topic. What is some advice you have for the next generation of AEC leaders? Right, like you've been all over the world, you've experienced a lot of different projects, project types, cultures. What is some advice you have, like for the next generation of leaders? What do they need to do to step up?
Yeah. Ooh. Okay. So I think one thing I would share to the next generation of leaders is I don't think that your career in the construction industry is like a linear ladder sort of career. I think that like where I've learned the most is where I've stepped outside my comfort zone, like try different things. Like I wasn't a safety expert and I had lived in Australia for a week before I was like thrown into like figuring this out, right? So I think just like early in your career being very intentional about like trying new things and learning is like vitally important. Ask great questions. I remember I would ask my superintendents probably what they thought were stupid questions, right? But they were nice enough to be like, just ask me. There's no such thing as a stupid question you're going to learn. And I remember on my first construction project after graduation, we were installing underground utilities. And I asked he was like, oh, it always goes in this order. And I was like, well, why is like the sanitary sewer below like the domestic water? And he's like, Danielle, if you had a pipe, would you want, you know what, to like come out? And I was like, no. And so he's like, that's why it's lower. I don't actually even know if that's true. Stuck with me and I was like, that makes sense. So I think you just have to ask a ton of questions. I do see so learning is one thing, right? Just and be intentional about your learning, be intentional about stepping outside your comfort zone. The other way I would answer this is that I have yet to find a next generation leader who is not interested in technology, who does not want to innovate, who is like, thank you so much for telling me about the way you've always done it. I'm going to do it the same way. So I see that the next generation, I was like one of them at the time, right? That was interested in spreading technology and innovating how we build. But the next generation, I think, is also too quick to say that the reason that change didn't happen, right, or that technology didn't take hold was because we're too old school, or that like the construction industry doesn't want to change. They don't get it, right? And it's like, well, maybe there's something that you don't get on your side too. So maybe it goes back to learning, asking good questions. I think that if younger generations actually understanding how their businesses make money, what's important to the CEO across their leadership team, like what KPIs are you measured on? When you really understand that and can frame technology and innovation in that context, you'll be so much more successful. I think one of the things that helped me the most early in my career, just by happenstance, I happened to be placed in the cubicle right outside the CEO's office. And I distinctly remember thinking, great, I like have just started at my job here. I have no friends, no one's gonna come chit chat outside the CEO's office. But what I didn't realize was that like the CEO was gonna come and chit chat outside the CEO's office. And I was gonna get to see who was coming into the office, how he spent his time, and just little by little, like, absorbing what was important to him, and I really think that helped me a lot. So that's the other thing I would share for the next generation is just, like, understanding the business and leadership and framing technology in that light.
I mean, we have a bunch of great quotes from you, but that's definitely got to be one of the shorts because I totally agree with you, and I've never articulated that way. But I've never met a next generation leader that isn't trying to be more innovative or tech focused, right? I mean, it's just the future. And the counterpoint of that that people don't often realize is exactly what you said, which is you need to get buy-in from everyone else, right? And to do that, you need to understand their viewpoint too. Because sometimes, yes, are people just saying things because it's just always been done that way? Yeah. But sometimes are people saying things because it makes sense and you just don't know why it makes sense? Yes, also, and that was a great thank you for doing that. Before we let you go, I'm gonna end on a segment we really enjoy because it reveals like the human side of leadership, and it's our favorites segment. So these are quick fire prompts. Don't think too long. Like first
Now
thing
I'm
that comes
nervous.
to your head. Um, do you have a favorite like leadership book or podcast or quote?
Favorite book is An Astronaut's Guide to Life on Earth, which is, like, totally different than the construction industry. But this astronaut writes about like what he's learned in his career that he wishes humans on Earth would get to know. It's fascinating, it's funny, and it like I think about it so much.
I'm gonna pick it up. I'm a big audio book guy, so that will definitely be on my list. Favorite productivity tool?
I want to see my phone, but I actually sometimes think my phone makes me less productive. But like I'm able to get stuff done on the go. So like yeah, my
My family will tell you, like, I'll be sitting at my desk and I'll be working off my phone. Like, why? Like, my computer is
I
like
noticed that. Sometimes I was like, wait, why does it say set for my iPhone? I'm at my desk.
And the last one is, it's an interesting question because sometimes it's hard to think of, but do you have, like, a favorite, like, failure lesson you've learned? Like, a time where maybe things didn't go your way, but you learned something from it?
Yes, and it's epic. I set the Chicago River on fire. So whenever people ask me about, like, when I failed at work, I was like, "Yeah, I failed at work there." I was building, a section of the Chicago Riverwalk for my family business. We were surprised to find out that as we were demoing this thing called a timber dolphin, it was basically built to, like, make a perfect campfire. These, wood piles are, like, coated in creosote, super flammable. As we were trying to demolish it, it set on fire, but we're like, "Well, it's in the river, just put a pump on it, it'll be fine." We left the pump on overnight, but then the pump failed overnight, and by the time
Oh,
we
no.
woke up, it was ablaze. The Chicago Fire Department, it was dramatic because they had not used their, like, fire barge in years. So there's these fire cannons or, like, water cannons on the fire barge that, like, pull water from the river to, like, shoot it at the fire, but they, like, lost control, so they were, like, spraying people on the bridge, and I actually woke up to this being on the news. So it was epic. What did I learn from it? Read the spec book. Always have like multiple points to control. If something fails, there's multiple points of failure, right? So like, what was that backup plan for failure? But yeah, it's a fun story to share.
I love it. That's a good one, and, I'm always nervous asking that because sometimes people can't think of one, but you were right on the money there. You have one.
You know, I think of it a lot because it was so dramatic. Like, who sets the river on fire? But actually, the funny thing is, somebody else, the construction company that built a phase after us, did the same thing
Oh, no.
on fire. So talk about construction needing to learn from each other.
Feedback loop, right? We talked about that earlier. They need
Exactly. Like, wait, we've done this. I looked it up on YouTube years later to show my kids, and I thought I found it, but then I was like, wait, this isn't from that year. I was like, this is the next phase. Like, how did they also set it on fire?
So good. All right, well, that's all the time we have for today. We'll include links to the resources mentioned in today's shows in the notes. Thanks again for listening, everyone. Thank you so much, Danielle. What an awesome episode. Great to learn about you and everything you do. And to our audience, keep an eye out for our next episode.
This episode is brought to you by Infinite Consulting Corp., your go-to firm for MBE certified project and construction management consulting. Discover how Infinite can help you build a better future at infiniteconsultingcorp.com.